What's going on, people? Welcome to the Central Club. This episode is brought to you by Reinspire Printing and Boss Security. If you haven't already, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the club, and hit the bell button to be notified of future content. Today, we're in a totally different scene. This is the first time we've done this. Not only is it the first time we've done a live podcast, but we're also in a public space. We're in the Uni South Wales. It's the Co-Alkalians event, the mixing of cocaine and alcohol to try and prevent suicide awareness. We've got familiar faces like Nicola Abraham on the panel, but we've also got some other mothers of bereaved family members, and we've also got some people who have lived experience. I hope you enjoy this podcast. Stay central.
The Central Club.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Mag. Thanks for inviting me today. Pleasure to be here on such an important topic. I think there's not enough of this out there, and if we, the Central Club, can shine more light on that, we definitely will. It's funny because we've interviewed Nicola before on the podcast, and if any of you really want to go into depth on that story, please head over there to hear such a tragic but powerful story. I don't really want to take up too much time, really, and just jump into it, really, guys. And first of all, just tell us why you are here.
Okay, so we're here today to raise awareness. We're here to raise awareness for what we believe is the main contributing factor to our sons dying by suicide. So in 2015, I lost my son, Jacob, to suicide. As it became, it was a huge blow to the whole family because he had no previous mental health, issues. He was kind of hardworking. He was very popular with his friends. He was into the gym. He really invested in his future and looking after himself. And he was really, really laid back. So nothing really bothered him. He had no kind of like life stresses. He still lived at home, wrapped in cotton wool at 24, and no kind of childhood aces. So, for us and the whole community that knew Jacob, it was a huge, huge shock, his death. So when Jacob died by suicide, I decided, we were battling with why. Why did this happen? What was the main contributing factor to this? What we knew that Jacob was out the evening before. He'd gone to a rave at the Students' Union. And what we found out then through the inquest and toxicology, that he had taken cocaine and alcohol. The following day, we know that he hadn't slept. I think he'd gone into something like 32 hours. And we know that is kind of the side effect of the come down of using alcohol and cocaine. He'd said to friends that he had the hangover from hell and, he was thinking of ways to die, but he said it in a very jovial way that his friends thought that he was joking. When he died and we had the phone back from the police, there was my evidence. It was all there on the phone. Previous nights out, Jacob had voiced to his friends that he was struggling after he'd used alcohol and cocaine, and that he'd left him really depressed for days after, and that he thought about killing himself. And then a day or two after a night out, he would pick himself back up and he'd be back to happy, kind of laid back, trying to get fit Jake. So with this in mind, I just kind of set up a campaign because at the time in our community, Jacob was one of 5 young men who died by suicide, and there was that link to alcohol and cocaine. And then sadly, 9 months later, his childhood best friend also died by suicide. And again, he'd taken alcohol and cocaine the night before. So that kind of got me on my awareness campaign. And we did a documentary for Wales This Week covering the story of coethylene and the links. And there was myself, there was Andrew, which was Jacob's best friend's mum, and another family that came on board, and we spoke about that. We had lots of people contacting us after that, families saying, this happened to us, we've lost a loved one by suicide, toxicology showing cocaine and alcohol. We were contacted by people Scotland, north of Scotland. Kind of was all over. And then I was asked to go and speak live on the Victoria Derbyshire show for the BBC to speak about this issue, because I think publicly then there was the Love Island, I don't know if anyone watches Love Island, and the Love Island stars that had taken their own life as well, and again the links to alcohol and cocaine. So this was back in 2000 and I think 18, 19, before the pandemic. Again, kind of it all blew up. We were out there raising the awareness, and then I kind of like hit a lull, because I found that it was exhausting to do it by myself. And that's when Nicola came on board there. Nicola had sadly lost Tom. Again, the same links with alcohol and cocaine. And Maggie came on board. I met Maggie at a conference. So we've just, I've had a bit of a backup, and post-pandemic now, we're hoping that we can get out there and really, really raise awareness around this. Because I've been struggling for 7 years to do this, because I just don't want, it's preventable. I don't want anybody else, to go through the hell that we have to go through as a family. And in 7 years, nothing's changed, but it has. It's got worse. This situation has got worse. I know the environment that young men and women are being exposed to when they're going on a night out. And it's just not young men and women. We've seen kind of the age demographic change and gender change in cocaine use and people dying by suicide. So, like I said, the situation has got worse, but we're post-pandemic, and we're hoping now, with Mags has been absolutely amazing. We can't thank her enough, because it's hard for us to we're exhausted. We're not always on top of it. We're, dealing with our own grief. And Mags has been like the backbone of this. And we're here today to hopefully make a difference. With that, I'm going to hand you over to Nicola.
This is actually the first time I've ever held a mic in my life, so this feels good. Okay, so my story is so similar to Nicola's. It's crazy. We lost our son Tom in March 2019. Tom was 22. I'd already found Nicola online because we knew that Tom was using cocaine and alcohol. And 18 months previously, he'd attempted to take his own life after being out for a couple of nights. Luckily, we saved him, and that's when we became aware of what the effect of using the cocaine was having on him, and hence why I dug into it and found out a bit more information. So after that happened in 2017 and we saved Tom, Tom asked for help. He didn't understand what had happened the night before. He really didn't, he couldn't understand why. He didn't even remember half of what had happened. And he asked for help. So we sought help for Tom, and he didn't use cocaine for 18 months. That was really difficult for him. He avoided social situations, etc., because we knew, and he knew, that's where he would be triggered to use again, I guess. But sadly, 18 months later, 22-year-old boy had a girlfriend, he had a job, he was going to the gym. No, exactly like Nick says, they could be the same boy, Tom had no previous mental health issues. He was happy, had loads of friends, he played sport, tick, tick, tick. There was nothing apart from his use of cocaine, which I became more aware of was used so frequently and was quite normalised. It was quite strange for me in the beginning when I found that out, because I've got 2 older children and I wasn't aware that of anything on that sort of scene. So it was quite a shock. But yeah, so we became aware of that, and that was the only issue, and we knew that was what was happening. But 18 months later, he went out again. He got back into using cocaine, and 10 weeks later, he was out for a couple of nights on the run, and sadly, we were away at the time, so we lost Tom. So very quickly, the same as Nicola, the adrenaline kicks in. We didn't know why. So I was waiting for the toxicology, and it wasn't a shock because I knew what had happened. The day before, Tom had been absolutely fine. He had booked a holiday. He had been out with his girlfriend. He was making plans. He'd been in the gym that week. He was, as my elder son told me, he was cooking chicken and broccoli, which apparently is a good thing when you go into the gym. You know, everything was fine. And then obviously he went out on the Friday, the Saturday, etc. And that's what happened. So again, as I said, I knew what the reason was, or I believe what the reason was. So when we got to Tom's inquest, I spoke to the coroner and I asked at that point, could we do a Section 28, which is a report of to prevent future deaths. So she asked us to write a paper, which my daughter kindly helped me with, and we wrote a paper with all the evidence and research that we had found, because you just go into that sort of mode of just trying to find out more. We submitted that to her, and she asked one of her assistant coroners to start a data retrieval exercise over the last 5 years, which I thought was really positive. We were like, amazing, this is great, something's happening. You know, we're going to get the evidence here to do some sort of public health campaign. But then we had COVID, and that work was stopped, sadly. And as Nick said, I think it was just before COVID, I went to, I was invited to a suicide and self-harm meeting by Julianne, which I'm glad I went to, because there was Maggie. And yeah, we set up talking. Maggie was like, I met another lady a few years ago with exactly the same story. This can't be going on, still going on. I need to do something about this. And Maggie being Maggie, that's what she did. And that's what's brought us here today. So I suppose the same objective as what Nicola's saying. We just want people to understand that our boys were the same as everybody, you know, sorry, emotional now. Other boys, you know, there was nothing different. They were just going out, having a good time. You know, people will do it this weekend, people were doing it last weekend. We just want awareness raised. We can't stop it, you know, we just want to have harm reduction, really, in some sort of campaign or somewhere in a strategy. And hopefully today will help everybody get together and we can get that going.
I'm Paul, Sean's dad. First time I've met the two Nicolas and Maggie. Why am I here? It's very early days for us as a family. Sean's mum has been heavily involved in meeting the two Nicolas. Luckily for us, there's a lot of work been done. And I suppose for us, we got the answers quite quickly on why Sean took his own life. If you want proof of an individual who had no previous mental health worries, then I think, you know, his friends will say that's Sean. 3 days before, we were chatting, something tragic had happened. I think a girl we knew had died in a car accident. I think somebody else had took their own life. And Sean actually said to me, stuff like that don't happen to our family, does it? I said, no. I said, some families seem to have that tragedy. I said, no, it doesn't happen. I caught him, he worked for myself, I caught him at my desk at dinner with his feet up, eating his dinner. I said, what are you doing? He said, well, I'm just thinking about the empire, I'm going to take over. I said, oh, are you? I said, we do all the work and you'll reap the rewards. I said, that's it, I'll be sat here with my cigar. He was due to move in with his girlfriend. After Sean passed, you know, finding the washer in his van, that was basically, you know, the following weekend about to move in with his girlfriend. The taxi driver interviewed, when he was interviewed by the police, said, to tell you the truth, Sean were a bit boring because normally he's full of life and he would talk about washers and cookers. It was just a bit strange, you know. It wasn't like Sean. He was excited about moving in with his girlfriend, you know, and that's from the taxi driver. So all I'm saying to you is Sean crashed, and it was as a result of, you know, the research that we understood why, and I suppose that helped us as a family very early. And the message, you know, it's early days for the Ginger Heart Foundation, but we have probably give answers to other families as well in the locality, and we're seeing that more and more, where they have gone for years not understanding why. So not to repeat what these two are doing, but we want to get that message out. And I suppose my difference, and this is a personal one, but the supporting people experiencing grief and trauma, I was disgusted at the support that was available to myself. Now, I don't want to call, you know, the charities, they're all great, but they're very, 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 very busy. You know, I know the police are just having to deal with, you know, mental health, you know, 100% all the time. And the message I got back was, well, we don't do counselling for the first 6 months. Well, it's not actually counselling I want. It's actually I want to speak to somebody. The reason I'm here is as a dad. I'm aware that, you know, dads probably are different than the mums. And maybe that support and talking about how you're feeling isn't there. And I know there's many male charities, you know, emerging, trying to encourage that talking. But I just wanted somebody to talk to, and I just wanted somebody who probably knew what feelings I were having to actually just chat. Probably not in depth, but just, are you all right? No. Good. Right. Let's move on. You know, that kind of support. So that's something personal for me, and I think it's massive. And that's probably it. You know, it's just a repeat of what is there. But this can happen to anybody. And to me, Sean is absolute proof of that. And I don't want that to happen to other families. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing those stories. I think the worrying thing is how similar all those stories are. And I'm just so happy to know that you three can relate to each other and support each other. It's a massive shame that, you know, you had lack of that, but hopefully in the near future we will see more of that support. Of course, like you said, you don't think there was any underlying mental health issues before. Were any of you educated about the mixing of cocaine and alcohol?
No, I wasn't educated around the risks. I knew that, you know, that it was becoming more kind of prevalent, the cocaine use in kind of social settings. And I think I could see Jacob, how he struggled on a hangover, what we thought was a hangover, that he struggled for 2 or 3 days. And I remember saying to him, you know, is there something more that you're doing than using alcohol? Is there cocaine involved? And, you know, no, there's not. And I think for me, I wish like I always say, if I could go back, I would have different conversations with Jake, where I would say, you're not that stupid now. You're not using cocaine. You wouldn't touch that stuff. That's, you know, don't be so stupid, that type of conversations. And as parents, I think, you know, if we do find out that our children are using drugs, we go into a bit of hysteria and, why do you do that? It would be so stupid. In a way, it sounds, not that I would be supportive of it, but I would say to him, if you're using cocaine and alcohol together, please, can you come to me the next day so I can keep you safe whilst you're on a come down? Because what we know is that it'll pass and you'll be fine. But can I be your go-to? If you have used, you're not to be alone. You know, you have to have somebody around you. Create, you know, almost like a safety plan. We do it in our suicide prevention training. So let's do some strategies to keep you safe whilst you're using. And I remember Mag saying to me, you know, and it was so true, I'd rather have him here today using cocaine than dead. So it sounds as if you're kind of like condoning it, but we're not. It's just purely harm. It's harm reduction. It is harm reduction. And we're not out to judge either. I think what people need to understand is like I said, the environment that these young people are exposed to. And I know if you could speak to any young person, they'll say if you go in any social setting, 95% of, I wouldn't even say young people, that all ages are doing cocaine. You know, I think we've been to weddings and we've been to occasions lately that concerts, and my husband have walked in toilets as middle-aged men doing it. It's become so normalised, and we need to be having conversations about it, knowing that this is a risk to a person's mental health as well. There's lots of things that come with the come down, and I think for Jake, he hadn't slept. There was the self-loathing. We've spoken to other kind of young men that's gone through it. It's the money that they've spent as well. So they'll do a week's salary on that weekend. And they said there's nothing worse. You've got this horrendous come down. You have to go to the cash point, draw out another £150 to pay your dealer from the night before. It just all exasperates on their mental health. And I think with Jacob, he was aware of this and he did avoid social, like Tom did, social settings. But at 24 years old, he was sat at home on a Saturday night in bed and he couldn't understand how his friends could do it. And it was all kind of water off a duck's back. So, yeah, I think it's just about kind of definitely having those conversations and, asking them the questions and just being supportive and looking out for the signs as well, looking out for the signs, the next day and the following day and just saying, I'm around if you need me to talk about anything. So, yeah, I think, I didn't know much at the time about it. I didn't know how, I know what a hangover, we've all had a hangover and I knew that it impacted on him, but I didn't know there's two substances together and what he could do. Yeah. Definitely not. Yeah. So if anyone wanted to add to that.
It was just really similar. Obviously, previous to the first attempt that Tom made, I didn't know anything about it, but very quickly tried to learn as much as I possibly could, and looked at articles, as I said, and tried to understand and learn more. What I am finding now, is that people are contacting me daily. What can I do? My son, my daughter, my husband, my partner, my father, they're using cocaine. They're coming home, they really doubt, what can I do? They're spending all their money, etc. And I have some answers, similar now to Nicola. That's not what I would have said previously. I definitely did say to Tom, why are you doing that? Don't do it. Stop doing it. That's just daft. Like, why you don't understand? It would be very different now if I was speaking to him, and that's what I try and say to everybody who contacts us for support. Is you got to be there for people. You have to try and understand what they're going through. They are looking for help as well, so you need to work with them, and it's about harm reduction, and I think that's the most important thing. But I do get people as well who think that I'm like a stop using cocaine person, and I wish I was. I'd like to remove it obviously from what, but it's not about stopping, it's about making it reducing the harm. But I didn't know a thing, and now I seem to know quite a bit. Sadly,
I think you said it all for myself. I didn't know anything. I probably noticed something. Sean, me wrong, was he used it occasionally, and maybe when I think back, on Mondays walking into my office, he seemed a bit different, and that was probably him beating himself up. I think maybe when he had used it, the time when he had the come down and obviously took his own life. The time scale in between Sean being okay and not was so small. We're talking about half an hour, I think. So it's massive, from the taxi driver to coming home. Walking into my house and seeing my slippers in front of the fridge, which he'd obviously put on when he got him, and he just left them there in the fridge. That sticks in my mind. So there was absolutely nothing of signs, and that's the scary bit. And I think getting that message, the links between alcohol and cocaine, I'm similar to you. I'd like to stop it. I don't think it should be socially acceptable, the two, but what can you do? You want to support people. It's harm reduction and it's hard. I'd like to get all the dealers into one place and that's another story. And I had something in my mind about, working with the police to try and do it, because it's got to be stopped, because there's a massive, cocaine on its own, and, people can speak about alcohol, but the two together, this is what happens. So the answer is I didn't have a clue about the links, but through these two and the work Maggie, it became apparent what happened. All right, thank you.
I think looking from the outside, especially someone who used stronger drugs like heroin, the harm reduction there is amazing. And I think maybe sometimes we don't take it as serious with cocaine. I think that's probably something that we're over missing, is that we just, cocaine, that's not going to kill us, that type of thing. And I think it is that being socially accepted that it's overlooked. It's in everything. It's in all of our culture, music, the lot. It's the go-to thing, and the two of them together is as well. What I want to ask you is what has been done since you guys have been, on this journey, and what else do you think needs to be done? I know it's the $1 million question, but what do we need to do to kind of go on the right path of tackling this problem?
I suppose what's been done is that different conversations are now being had. And like Nick said, we're being contacted, weekly by loved ones, families, concerned. So I suppose they're having conversations, they're looking out for signs, just from us, kind of speaking out about this. So that's good. We're able to support people on a weekly basis. And we've probably had like hundreds of people come forward between us, concerned. So we're able to give that advice. What I would like is a public campaign around this. I think there's definitely more awareness, and there needs to be a public campaign. I would like to see, posters out in nightclubs, on the back of doors, in toilets. Jacob was in our local rugby club before he left to take his life. And I just thought when I walked in there after that, there was a pin board with all different kind of leaflets, things going on. And I just thought if there was something there addressing like the thoughts and feelings or around cocaine use and the dangers and giving coping mechanisms to deal with it, I just always think that really could have made a difference. You just needed somebody to address it and know, this is how you could possibly feel and this is what you need to do. So that, for me, that has been kind of my drive for the last 7 years to get this public health campaign. Obviously, we'd like to do it ourselves, but we don't want to go out there putting out leaflets. We would like the backing from public health to do that.
Yeah, as Nick said, we can keep doing what we are doing through social media, through our websites, through speaking to people, through the co-alc, we can do all that. But a public health campaign needs the data and the evidence behind it, and that's what we are working on now. So the evidence, we're working with the University of South Wales on research to look at that. And the data is crucial, and the issue with the data is the way that suicides are recorded. So not every suicide where cocaine is used is actually in the figures, sort of thing. So we're hoping that the work that Kerry's doing with the real-time data will help that, because that's what we really know. Because I don't know if everybody's aware that, you probably are, but suicides can be recorded as narratives, so they are not in the figures when we look at them. Sometimes toxicology isn't taken, so somebody might have used cocaine, but we don't know that. It really is hit and miss, and we're trying to get into working with the coroners and get that information, but that has proved quite a struggle. And continues to be so. And Maggie's nodding, so I'm sure it won't be a struggle for much longer. But so that's what we need. We can carry on doing what we are doing on a daily basis, and we can put posters and flyers and beer mats and everything else. But what we really want is a public health campaign out there, like Nick said, back of buses, like stop smoking, stop doing this. There's information on all these things, but we need that data and evidence behind it.
I think a campaign's a great idea. I was just thinking then when you were speaking, my concern is the user doesn't recognise that. So maybe that campaign is is aimed at maybe parents, etc., to recognise and see and then give that support. And as you said earlier, you know, the conversations could be a bit more tailored with your friend, family, children, around, you know, how you're feeling. Well, speak to me. I'm there for you in the morning if you need it. So that would be my slant on it, because to me, we've done posters in toilets. On a night out, I'm not so sure, and you probably know more.
Don't want to know.
Yeah, you're feeling what you're feeling, and you're feeling great, probably.
Yeah.
So maybe the campaign's got to be looked at a bit different for people to recognise where it is happening. Okay.
Also, as well, kind of for health professionals. So we had somebody go to their GP with this issue, and they said, I just don't know what to do with it. If it was heroin, there's the methadone program. If it's alcohol, there's different programs there. We just don't know what to do with cocaine. We don't know what approach to use or where to signpost for this. So again, I think it's more education there, maybe more kind of, services, that kind of thing, and through school as well, because I think with cocaine, it's quite a trendy, impressionable drug as opposed to other drugs. It's cool to do it, isn't it? And I just feel sad for the next generation if we don't do anything now. We've got grandchildren. I'm taking them to a desert island to live because honestly, I'm really, really scared for the next generation, and I think if that is what we can do is just save this and get out there and get everybody involved, hopefully we won't be in this, as bad a situation.
Two things there, I think. First, what you said about the toilets. I don't know the last time I bought a condom when I was in the toilets. It's then that's it. It's on a bigger scale, isn't it? Like, who's really going to look at that? And I think the other one, when you said about there's other options out there, you're right, there is other options for other drugs, and some people come into services with those problems who are quite agitated, like, why isn't there that help for me? Why isn't there a substitute? One of the things that I think, we're talking about cocaine and alcohol here, and I think there is a lot of help out there in certain places, especially for alcohol. And I think if you tackle the one problem, you kind of, try and kill the two birds with one stone, maybe. That's always one way of looking at it. But I think, again, for the two of them, there's not much out there, is there? And we need to look at that more. And it leads me to this, which I want to ask you guys. It's a bit of a weird one, but do you think we need to really kind of raise more awareness on suicide prevention or the cocaine and alcohol awareness? Which one do you think comes first? Yeah. It's like the chicken and the egg.
I feel really bad saying this in the room that we're in with but there's so much suicide prevention information out there. It's absolutely crazy. I think it's just, and I'm not knocking everybody I'm doing it myself. Do you know what I mean? It's just, there's so much out there, but I think it needs to be more specific, because individuals for what we're talking about today, the cocaine and alcohol, and I'm sure other, don't realise it's a link to suicide. That they are not individuals who are your classic, I won't say classic, but you would imagine are feeling suicidal. They really are not for the majority of the time. So they don't see themselves as fitting into that category. So they're not looking at anything to do with suicide prevention. It's just not there for them, And we've said before that the boys are slipped through the net because they don't see themselves as you just mentioned, like big time drug users, oh, no, I'm not that, I just do this. Yeah. So they don't go to drug use services or anything like that because they don't see they got a drug problem. They also don't see themselves on a mental health problem. So, yeah. But obviously you need suicide prevention, I get it, but more specific maybe.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think for 7 years now I've been doing suicide prevention, and I think the most important thing with suicide prevention is the contributing factors. Yeah. Because if we can tackle the contributing factors, then you don't need suicide prevention. So for us as a service, we see many contributing factors. for example, relationship breakdown in males, that's a massive kind of contributing factor that's come to the forefront for us, as is co-ethylene, there's gambling, there's lots of contributing factors. So for us, it's all about the contributing factors and then working around what is contributing to that suicide. Sometimes it's biological, so then there's kind of the health, the GP intervention there, or environmental, but there'll always be a contributing factor. And I think if we focus on that, then we would need suicide prevention. Yeah, so it's just looking at all these different factors.
Did you want to say anything on that, Paul? No, you okay? For the mothers and fathers out there who might watch this podcast, or someone out in the crowd right now, what would you say to those who might, have a son who's 15, 16, or a daughter who is on the cusp of, out and about doing these things?
I think it's going back to what we said. It's just having those conversations and the way that you have those conversations, and just understanding the environment they're going to be exposed to and the peer pressures as well, and just giving them strategies or being able, getting them to help manage them. Yeah, so I would just say, the conversations, and just say, I am there for this. This is, a new journey in your life, and this is what's going to happen. This is what you're going to be exposed to. So definitely educate yourselves, and just have those conversations. And it is difficult because I had a parent saying, I feel like I'm giving them the green light to go ahead and use drugs. But honestly, open conversations is the only way, that is forward.
I think it's exactly what Nick said, because I was definitely that parent who believed that my children probably wouldn't take drugs. I never did. My husband, I don't think so anyway. No. But, I was that person. I put my hands up. I didn't think that I was going to need to have these conversations. It's just not true. It's just, you just have to have the conversations. I had the conversations about, smoking and sex education and all these things, but I didn't have conversations about using any drugs. So I would definitely do that. And I needed to educate myself on that as well. So, it's education and talking.
I talk regularly to Sean. We work together. I had an experience with LSD when I was 17. Never took it again. It was great when I was with my friends. As soon as I was on my own, it wasn't. To my daughter and my son, they knew about that story. So for me, I'd had those conversations. And I think you can have those conversations, and you can have those conversations. I think what I've learned is probably that don't be on your own. If you are going to do it, please do not be on your own. Sean was texting regular right up until the end. Rather spookily, I forgot I was actually out in Cardiff at the time, and I'd just come back. But when he was texting me, I was actually on a night out in Cardiff. But it's being on your own. Do not, please, be on your own once you finish your night out. And that's the biggest one.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest ones for us as well. If you know somebody is vulnerable, do not leave them by themselves. I think we do this anyway now, suicide prevention. And if you can't be there, just put things in place that they're not by themselves, because that's when they're most vulnerable, is when they're left alone. And just knowing as well, I think for us as well, it's always addressing suicide thoughts. So talking openly about suicide thoughts. I think the statistics are 70% of us throughout our life will have thoughts of suicide. But it's a thought, and just knowing that thought will pass. What we don't want it to develop into a plan and then an action. So it's about keeping them safe around a thought. If you talking openly about suicide thoughts, if you get thoughts, again, how can you keep yourself safe? Don't be alone is honestly the life-saving advice, is not to leave somebody alone, but just talking openly about thoughts, suicide thoughts as well. So people can come to you and say, oh, actually, I'm getting thoughts. Can you come and sit with me? Or can I speak to you on the telephone? So it is about addressing the thoughts. And we always use the Samaritans, if you don't want to speak to family members or friends, pick up that phone just whilst you're having those thoughts. And we are getting lots of young men where they will use the Samaritans now. So we're making that, big part of their safety plan. So it's just about addressing the suicide thoughts as well.
That's very positive to see. And I think that's a high percentage of how often we think of it compared to how often we actually talk about it. Thank you so much. Is there any final words that you would like to say? You're going to get off the stage now and say, oh my gosh.
Just like, thank you for coming along today and listening to our story. And, if you can go away and tell other people, we're just, we're spreading the word on this. And that's what we want, really, isn't it? We just don't want anybody else to go through this. I can see Maggie mouthing, sorry. Okay, do you want to? Oh, yeah. Oh, you can.
I think I know what. Thank you very much to everybody for coming today. I know that I think Maggie first had this idea, and we all went, yeah, this is great. We have had moments where we thought nobody was going to come, didn't we? And what was going to happen? So this is brilliant. And thank you for listening to our stories. And I hope it's not too hard today with the subject that we're talking about. But Maggie has just reminded us that we've got some funding through the Co-Alc Alliance to do an Ask Kathleen, which would be a text-in service or similar question and answer thing when you are that parent or brother, sister, friend, whatever, and you want answers and you want to know what to do. So so that's coming soon.
I want to thank you. It's very early days for ourselves. All I'd say is probably the suicide prevention charities look at the hard data, and I think people are going to be very, very, very surprised when that data comes through. How cocaine probably links with alcohol, links to the mental health struggles that people go through that then lead to suicide, and then also the come down. So I think it's going to get more and more and more aware, and please support what we're trying to do in that. There was one other point. It's a personal one. As a dad, as a male, yes, we are different than females. We're probably not as open. So to me, again, support, with the initiatives around the male population. We know that the male population is the highest percentage on the suicide. We need to do something. So any initiatives that can support, obviously, users, and also the after events, the people who are left with to deal with the situation, the grief. As I say, my personal experience, I was disgusted at what was available, but I knew they were all busy. So it's just making funds available to help support. And that's me. Thank you.
I think we're done here. I think that's the first time I've done a podcast on time as well. Normally we go way over. So please, guys, thank you so much. Again, can we have one more round of applause for him, please? Thank you. Let's have a break.
The Central Club.